With the NBA season having finally wrapped up, we can now fully focus our attention on the upcoming NBA draft that's taking place in less than a week. And with that in mind, I thought it was a great time to update and finalize my mock draft with picks and explanations for all 30 teams in the first round. I'm sure there will be plenty of surprises on draft night, as there always are, but for now, here's what I think is going to happen this Thursday. At 1, the Spurs take Victor Wembanyama. Nothing new here. He's just one of the best prospects I've ever evaluated in my time doing this. 7'4" or 7'5", depending on who you ask. Elite rim protector, can create his own shot offensively. The handle, the fluidity, the shooting potential is all there with him. Just an overall outstanding prospect, and the Spurs get their next franchise level talent after struggling to find one over the last few years. At 2, I still have the Hornets taking Brandon Miller, despite some recent speculation that they'll take Scoot Henderson. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if this pick got traded, but right now, assuming the Hornets stay put, I have them taking Miller out of Alabama. Just the size, the shooting, and the two-way versatility he provides as a 6'9" on-ball creator and defender. Fits pretty seamlessly on paper with LaMelo Ball, and that's the direction the Hornets look like they're going to take, even though that might not be my pick. And you can hear more about that in this video. At 3, the Portland TRAILBLAZERS take Scoot Henderson. Again, this is another pick that can be traded on draft night or beforehand, but I think if Scoot is there, it really gives the Blazers an incentive to hang on to this pick. I have him as the second best player in the class. He's an outstanding athlete at the guard position, someone who can get to the paint whenever he wants to, great off-ball mover, high-flying athlete. The jump shot was a little bit worrisome for some evaluators, but I do believe that he will shoot, and even if he's an average shooter, I think his athleticism and downhill driving ability gives him enough avenues to success in the NBA as a scorer, and that's not even to mention his outstanding passing vision that's really improved over the last 2 years with G League Ignite, and the Blazers capitalize on Charlotte's mistake. At 4, I have the Rockets still taking Amen Thompson. Similar to Henderson, Thompson can just get to the paint whenever he wants, as he is an outstanding athlete with the springiness, dexterity, and burst to just blow by defenders one-on-one. At 6'7", he's a tremendous passer, and while he does tend to avoid contact at the rim a little bit, and the shot is a massive worry, the overall athleticism with Thompson is just too much to pass up here, because if the shooting and touch comes along, there's really nothing he can't do on the floor, and all of a sudden he becomes a really valuable NBA player. I'm sticking with the top 5 I had a month ago, with the Pistons taking Cam Whitmore at 5. I really like the athletic fit of him next to Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham in the backcourt, as Cade is someone who's more pace-oriented, while Ivey and Whitmore just give Detroit some flat-out speed, power, and strength. I'd expect the Pistons to be one of the most exciting young offenses to follow in the league. I'm sure they'd be great in transition with Whitmore, who's a high-flying slasher who showed a real ability to create his own shot despite the results not fully being there. And the best thing about him in Detroit is that he won't be asked to create for others, given the fact that they already have Cade and Ivy, which limits worries about his lack of feel for the game that he showed at Villanova. In my first change since the last mock draft I have the Magic taking Ausar Thompson here at 6. My reasoning here is that I just think Ausar, if he hits, is one of the most athletic and dynamic players in this draft. Again, the jump shot is a worry, but overall he just does so many things well, from defending multiple positions to making really nice connective passes to getting separation on the ball, that the Magic can kind of justify in taking him here. They also have another pick at 11 where I think they will address shooting, more on that in a little bit. But here, Thompson, again, just the upside thanks to his elite athleticism, his high feel for the game, and defensive potential secures him a spot in the top 6 for me. At 7, I have the Pacers taking Jarris Walker as somebody who can just provide a big body next to Miles Turner in the paint. Indiana desperately needs size and strength in the front court, and Walker gives them all of that in addition to his immense defensive versatility. This is someone who I think could legitimately guard 1 through 5 in the NBA, and that's not even to mention his offensive game, which I think there is more to than what he was able to show at Houston. This is a guy who was known as a playmaker coming out of high school, and the fact that he hit around 35% of his threes is really encouraging for someone who wasn't necessarily known as a shooter back in high school. With Walker, you get another high field guy to pair next to Tyrese Halliburton, and you also get to solidify your front court defense in the process. At 8, I still have the Wizards taking Anthony Black out of Arkansas. There have been some rumors suggesting that the Wizards will look to trade Beal this offseason, but regardless of whether he's a Wizard or not next year, I still think Anthony Black is the pick here. This is a team that has been desperate to get a point guard ever since John Wall left, and Anthony Black might be the best processor of the game in this draft class. He's really good at manipulating defenses with his eyes. He can make all of the pick and roll reads. He plays with pace, but he can also get his own shot and drive to the rim. Defensively, Black is one of the best perimeter defenders in the class. He has really quick feet, really good instincts, will pressure the ball relentlessly, and overall just has a great motor on that end. And I think this is just somebody the Wizards could easily build their culture around for the future, regardless of whether or not Bradley Beal is there. At 9, I have the Jazz taking Cason Wallace out of Kentucky. This might be a little bit of a shock, but just looking at Utah's depth chart, they really do not have a franchise guard, and I think Cason Wallace might be too good to pass up here, despite their need for a physical forward next to Lauri Markkanen. Wallace is an elite point of attack defender, and he can play either guard spot, which really helps his NBA versatility. Shot 36% from 3, mainly on catch and shoot attempts, and he also has an underrated explosion ability that allows him to get to the rim and finish through contact thanks to his sturdy frame. Obviously, you worry about the self-creation aspect to Wallace, but frankly, I think he does too many things well for Utah to pass him at 9. And if you want to learn more about Cason Wallace, check out this video. At 10, the Dallas Mavericks take UCF's Taylor Hendricks, and this might be one of my favorite potential fits in the entire draft. Hendricks gives Luka Doncic and the Mavs a big shooter with size and defensive versatility, as he knocked down 39% of his threes and also averaged over a block per game. Great secondary rim protector while also being able to stay in front of smaller guys. Hendricks gives them toughness, shooting, and skill, while also boasting some upside off the dribble, and he really just makes a lot of sense for a Dallas team looking to optimize their roster around Luka. As mentioned earlier, the Magic are back on the clock at 11 thanks to the Nikola Vucevic trade, and I have them taking Grady Dick, probably one of the best shooters in the entire draft class. He's 6'8", has really quick hands defensively to make up for any athletic concerns you may have, incredibly coordinated, high feel processor of the game, and really it's just about the shooting with him. He's someone who can make any defense pay by just standing in the corner and commanding teams to pay attention to him. He could play really well next to a primary creator like Franz Wagner or Paolo Banchero, and really this is a perfect fit for an Orlando team that has a lot of really talented passers but lacks the shooters to convert on the open looks that they can create, and Grady Dick just fits this team perfectly in every single sense, and I have him going at 11. At 12, the Thunder take Bilal Coulibaly out of France. Kind of seen as a mystery man and perhaps a 2024 prospect at the beginning of the season, he's really emerged late as his Mets 92 team has advanced into French League playoffs. He's a teammate of Victor Wembanyama, so a lot of scouts got their eyes on him while watching Victor. 6'6" or 6'7", really talented defender who uses his length exceptionally well, very fluid and explosive athlete. He'll pressure ball handlers, he'll fight through screens, and will really give Oklahoma City a nice developmental piece long term to look forward to. Offensively, he's a little bit raw, but he still knocked down 36% of his threes in France's top division, while also showcasing some on-ball creation ability as well, even though that's a long way from being fully realized at the NBA level. At 13, I have the Raptors taking Keontae George out of Baylor. I think this Raptors team, regardless of which direction they decide to go, whether it's rebuild or kind of run it back with the same core, I think they need perimeter shot creation, especially with Fred VanVleet declining his option and becoming a free agent. Keontae George, while maybe not the most efficient player in the class, is certainly one of the best at creating his own shot in any given situation. A built 6'4" combo guard who I thought really impressed as a passer given his reputation as more of a scorer coming out of high school. Sturdy athlete who just has the ability to take over games over short spurts, and I think the Raptors are kind of looking for that dynamic backcourt shot creator that George could be. At 14, I have the Pelicans taking Nick Smith Jr. out of Arkansas. Obviously a disappointing season for him as he struggled with injuries throughout the entire year. His college tape doesn't really scream first round pick, but he was considered a top 5 recruit coming out of high school, where he showed a really nice ability to get to the rim and finish with either floaters or layups. Arkansas spacing, as mentioned earlier, was a total disaster, so those driving lanes really weren't available for him. I do think he might struggle to get to the rim at the NBA level, but at 14, a guy like Nick Smith provides really nice pick and roll potential for an offense that sometimes looks like it lacks a primary creator. I think he can knock down catch and shoot threes too. He might not play right away considering New Orleans has a pretty solid roster, but I think he's a nice bet to take here at the end of the lottery. At 15, I have the Hawks taking Chris Murray out of Iowa. Known as the twin brother of Keegan, Chris really shined this past season as a Hawkeye, averaged around 20 points a game, really versatile defender who has a long wingspan and can kind of disrupt anyone from point guards to small forwards and even some power forwards. And with Trae Young in Atlanta, they're going to be a team that always needs more versatile wing defenders. And at this point in the draft, I think Chris Murray offers you the best 3-and-D wing skill set. And so for me, while he might not have the highest upside, I think Atlanta is trying to find guys that will help them win now. And Chris Murray should be able to do just that. At 16, I had the Jazz taking Leonard Miller out of G League Ignite. He's a guy that flirted with the 2022 NBA draft, but then decided to withdraw and play for Ignite this past season. And he really blossomed late as a 6'10", shot-creating ball handler, especially when Scoot Henderson was shut down for the season. The on-ball flashes are really incredible. He can kind of get to a pull-up. He knocks down catch-and-shoot threes. He rebounds at a really high level. And again, at his size, you're not going to find somebody with a more versatile skill set than Leonard Miller. I do have some concerns on the defensive end, particularly when he's guarding in space. But overall, I really like his hustle, his instincts, and just his baseline skill level. And for a Jazz team that is probably a few years away from contending, I think he makes sense as an upside pick here. At 17, I have the Lakers taking Kobe Buffkin out of Michigan. He's really a guy who rose throughout the back half of the season and the pre-draft process as teams got more eyes on him. Crafty 6'4" combo guard who's just a solid basketball player. He's someone who can make live dribble passes out of pick and roll while also offering spot-up shooting ability that you need from an off-ball guard standpoint. Defensively, while he is a very slight player right now, he has very solid instincts. He has good reach and length. So I think there is an avenue for him to become a positive NBA defender, especially as he adds more strength. But really just the overall skill set with Buffkin, the shooting, the pick and roll playmaking, and the high IQ decision making really gives me the confidence that he can play as a third guard and kind of fill in the gaps based on the team he's drafted to. And with the Lakers, I think he provides a nice little backcourt burst to a team that has a lot of uncertainty facing it in the coming months. After a finals run, I have the Heat taking Derek Lively II out of Duke. This pick might come as a little bit of a surprise, but I really think after watching the finals, it became clear that the Heat need another big guy next to Bam Adebayo. And Derek Lively offers them just that as somebody who can protect the rim, take on some of the bigger players that the Heat face in the playoffs like Nikola Jokic, and really just give Bam a break. I don't really see the Heat drafting for the future here. I think Lively's someone who can come in right away and make an impact in 10 to 15 minutes a night. Obviously with Lively, the offense is a little bit limited, but again, in Miami, he won't be asked to do that much. I think from a depth standpoint, it really makes sense for Miami to take him here at 18. At 19, I have the Warriors taking Andre Jackson Jr. out of UConn. This is probably a little bit high for Jackson, but I really just think he fits the Warriors mold incredibly well as someone who can pass, who can move the ball, very dynamic athlete, can run the break in transition, can screen players really well. Defensively, he's all over the place, one of the best hustle guys in the entire class. And while he doesn't shoot it, Golden State's obviously one of the best shooting teams in the league, so he doesn't really need to shoot it to be impactful. And the Warriors could be also looking for the type of player to replace Draymond Green if they decide to move off of him in the near future. At 20, I have the Rockets taking Jalen Hood-Schifino after already having taken Amen Thompson at 4. This might seem like a lot of guards considering they still have Jalen Green, Ty Washington, and Kevin Porter Jr. on the roster. But for me, I think it was very clear that Houston kind of needs a grown-up in the room, and Hood-Schifino, with his composure and poise, really makes a lot of sense for Houston here. He's a 6'6" lead guard who I think could ultimately blossom into the starting point guard in Houston, or as someone off the bench who just gives them a little bit more depth. He won't make mistakes. He's an elite mid-range pull-up shooter out of ball screens, showed some real passing ability as he was able to play point guard at Indiana later in the season. And again, guys who are 6'6", lead ball handlers, play with composure, poise, tend to work in the NBA. And so I know the Rockets have a glut of guards on that roster, especially with James Harden potentially coming in. But for me, I like Hood-Schifino enough to take him here regardless of the potential fit down the line. The Nets have 2 picks here at 21 and 22 back-to-back, so I'll just lump these in together. I have them taking Dariq Whitehead and Jordan Hawkins at 21 and 22 respectively. Whitehead is a guy who obviously struggled with injuries throughout his entire season at Duke, but in high school was really a mature player who can kind of do a bit of everything. At Duke, he couldn't really get his feet under him, but he still knocked down 40% of his threes. And at 6'7", that inherently holds value. And so for a Nets team that's kind of in flux, I think they're willing to take an upside bet here with Whitehead as someone who, if he gets back to his high school form, could end up being a really, really good NBA player. And then at 22, I have him taking Jordan Hawkins, just adding a shooter who can play in any system with any team just because of how dynamic he is off of movement. He's someone you can just throw in there as a weapon and have him occupy defenses because he's always moving without the ball, always looking to get his shot off. And at 38% with his volume, that's really, really impressive. We all saw what he did in the NCAA tournament. The Blazers are on the clock again at 23, and I have them taking Trayce Jackson-Davis out of Indiana here. Obviously, last year for Portland, they ended up tanking to end the season, but the rim defense was really bad with Jusuf Nurkic. So Trayce Jackson-Davis kind of gives Portland a nice change of pace there as someone who can protect the rim, roam a little bit defensively, and then also offensively really be an awesome screener, passer, cutter, and post finisher. This might be a little bit high for Jackson-Davis, but if you're Portland, I think TJD is someone who can fit either timeline, whether it be keeping Damian Lillard and trying to build a contender, or going full rebuild and focusing on the development of Scoot Henderson in this case. So TJD is my pick here for the Blazers at 23. At 24, I have the Kings taking Olivier Maxence Prosper out of Marquette. Really athletic and bursty 6'8" wing who is just an egoless player in terms of what he can do defensively. He's not someone who's going to demand a lot of touches on the ball. He can come in, he can hit an open three if he gets an opportunity to, but really just the defense and the hustle, the versatility that Prosper provides is what I think the Kings are really looking for here. I think they need more wing defenders and guys who can really be physical in battle. We saw them get cooked by the Warriors because they couldn't grab a rebound. Prosper absolutely helps with that, and just someone to toughen that team up a little bit after a really nice season this past year. At 25, I have the Grizzlies taking Brandon Pajemski out of Santa Clara. We don't know what's going to happen with Ja Morant just yet, but regardless of that, the Grizzlies have a certain type that they try to target in the draft. They really look for highly productive players who tick a lot of boxes and do a lot of things well, and that is certainly Pajemski, one of the best scorers, passers, and rebounders at the mid-major level this past year. And while people do worry about his athleticism and defense, I think he shows enough instincts and overall activity to be relatively effective on that end. This pick just makes a lot of sense from what the Grizzlies tend to value, and Pajemski can really offer them another playmaking guard. At 26, I have the Pacers doubling down on front court depth and taking Noah Clowney out of Alabama. Very rangy 6'10" defender who I think can stay in front of a lot of people defensively. Offensively, he's a little bit more of a work in progress. I think he could really be used well as a lob threat. He wasn't really cast in that role at Alabama due to the presence of Charles Bediako, but he also got experience playing in a more spread out system. Very solid cutter, really good end-to-end speed, takes long strides with the ball in his hands, and really just defensively, the versatility, the ability to play a variety of positions depending on what type of lineup you want to use. I think this gives the Pacers a lot of flexibility, and he's also someone who is still coming into his own as a player, so this represents a nice upside play here towards the end of the first round. At 27, I have the Hornets taking Jordan Walsh. Walsh to me just represents the ultimate glue guy that teams want to have on their roster, and I think he's worth a first-round pick for a Charlotte team that really lacks an identity defensively. Walsh is someone who can switch around, who can make impact plays, harass ball handlers, he'll rebound, and so he does enough on that end of the floor to limit my concerns about him on the offensive end, where he did struggle as a shooter and as a ball handler. I'm not sure how much he gives you offensively, but I think defensively is where he really makes his mark, and that's really what the Hornets kind of desperately need at this point in the draft. At 28, I have Utah taking wing Maxwell Lewis out of Pepperdine. He has good size at 6'8", very long arms, can knock down open threes with ease, also has some on-ball equity as a driver and as someone who can attack closeouts off the catch. While he wasn't as impactful defensively as his frame would suggest, I think if you're Utah here, you're banking on a guy who has great size, can knock down open threes, and potentially defend multiple positions, as Lewis represents one of the most valuable archetypes in the NBA today. The Pacers have their third first-round pick in this year's draft, and I have them taking Jett Howard, just another floor-spacing shooter with size for Tyrese Halliburton to really work with. Obviously, Jett isn't a great defender, and I don't know really what he does on the ball yet that warrants enthusiasm, but again, the shooting and the ability to get a shot off whenever he really wants to should hold some value here at the end of the first round, so I have Indiana taking him at 29. And then finally, the last pick of this draft goes to the Clippers, and I have them taking Amari Bailey out of UCLA. He's someone who struggled to start the year, but I still think he's a very, very solid prospect long term. Someone who can play either on or off the ball offensively. And while he isn't the best athlete, I think he plays with such poise and composure that he makes it work in the NBA. And for the Clippers, a team that kind of needs a playmaking guard off the bench, this makes a lot of sense as a win now play in addition to someone you can build with down the line potentially. And that wraps up my official 2023 NBA mock draft. As always, give me your thoughts below in the comment section. What did I get right? What did I get wrong? Be on the lookout for my big board video dropping early next week, in addition to my 50,000 word 60 player draft guide that will be available on Monday via my Twitter account at BobbyDouglas21. So again, thanks so much for watching, and we will see you very soon.